Woo! I am looking like Grizzly Adams. What the hell? This is COFOH Live Undead. I am your host, Daniel Crosier, and I am joined today by the amazing artist, Kevin Waltz.
How's it going?
Oh, but first... You write something on my face. Kevin, how are you?
Good, man. How you doing?
I'm not too bad. I'm for everybody at home, I am still laid up in bed with a fractured tibia.
Yeah, much different look than your intro there you got going.
I know. I used to be kind of aerodynamic and custom splashed with fake blood.
How many takes of that? Did you do that one take?
Oh yeah. You do that. Yeah. You just get one take.
One take, man.
Yeah, I'm a one take kind of guy. But it's best if I have no lines.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, if I have lines, everybody in the room is fucked. You're stuck till two.
Yeah.
Kevin, how are you? You are an amazing artist. Tell us a little bit about where how you grew up and how you got into the arts.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So with me, it kind of all starts really when I was a kid. I was in like kindergarten, right? I lived in Utah at the time, and I actually went to a Catholic school at the time. And the nuns came in one day and they brought in these little, those little drawing pamphlets. It's like you have to like recreate the character. It was like a pamphlet with a blank page, and it was like, oh, try to draw this character. And I was like the only kid in class that like didn't draw like a stick figure, basically. And then so afterwards, my mom met with one of the nuns who wanted to meet her after class, and she's like, "Oh, your son's the only one that drew this without, having some sort of weird stick figure." So she's like, "You should really let him pursue that." And kind of ever since then, my mom kind of pushed me into doing art, and so I started doing that. Got into it in high school. I did it a lot when I was a kid. Then I kind of gave up on it for a little bit, and then I had a high school art teacher that was a really good teacher who he was like, "Hey, you should come take my class." Took his class, really liked him. He kind of saw potential in me. So I kind of did his studio art class for the next couple of years in high school. And then from there on, he was like, "You got to go to school for it. You got to go to college for it and just pursue it even more." So that's what I did. Ended up at UNC. Northern Colorado. Yeah. So I went there for art. And then I ended up graduating with my bachelor's in visual arts with an emphasis in drawing and graphic design. Because the last year I was there, I was always like really traditional. I was like, I don't need computers for my artwork or any of that shit. It was always like pen on paper, pencil paper. But towards the end there, that was right when, the iPad started coming out and all this other stuff. And I was like, I should probably learn some graphic design stuff so I can get a job eventually. So that's what I did. And then, so I graduated from UNC, and then, from there, I really kind of just did everything on my own, met other artists, got jobs through here and there, a lot of in the music industry, and then, stuff like that. And then just kind of pursued every opportunity that I had. Some I failed miserably on, others I did really well. So that's yourself. That's just the life of an artist. You're going to fail, 100 times before you get, success in one thing, but that one time kind of makes it worth it,
Yeah. So you've been doing a lot of, from the get-go freelance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Kind of just know this guy, just networking itself, because if you do it right, it's a risk, because sometimes you have those months where it's like, oh, I have too much work where you have to like turn down stuff. And then you have a month where it's like, damn, I can use a job,
Right.
So
Right.
it gets a little risky here and there, but it's nice though, because it's kind of like your own boss, but at the same time, you have to learn how to push yourself because there's really no one telling you what to do a lot of the times.
Yeah. One of the things, that I love about you is, you're so versatile because you're also a tattoo artist.
Correct. Yep. Yeah. Tattooing I've been doing since like it was like last year. I started working at Clean Slate Tattoo down in Centennial in Colorado
Wow.
here.
Nice.
And yeah, that's been really awesome too. It takes a lot of dedication to do as well, but that's kind of what I try to do too. I try to be a jack of all trades, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
as best as I can, because I think it's extremely hard to be like the best or the greatest at one thing. So I'm like, well, I'm just going to try to learn as much as I can of everything in the art, in the art biz
Sure.
or the art world, you could say, so I can kind of take on more stuff if I need to.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, tattooing seems to be a pretty steady gig. I see a lot of your artwork that you're posting. Are you still, what is it like, apprenticing? Is that
Yeah, so
is
I
that the word?
started apprenticing in what was it, like August of last year, and then I started
Mhm.
tattooing like full time. It was probably around like January. I've been doing it for a little bit though now,
Mhm.
because I started tattooing, like actually tattooing other people in like November of last year, and then started getting good enough to where I could take on clients and walk-ins
Oh,
and all
okay.
that good stuff. Like earlier, later that year, like December-ish, just January-ish. It's kind of a blur because you're there all the time.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so yeah, that's one of the reasons why I got into it as well, because I've always liked the trade itself. I have a bunch of tattoos myself, and it's also I feel like one of the few businesses in the art world where like I truly feel like you get paid what you're worth, and
Right.
you kind of make as much money as you want to, like if you're
Okay.
there, it's like, oh, I can take on 5 today, or I can take on 2. But if I take 2, I want to make less money. So you
Yeah.
really do have a control over how much you kind of want to bring in at the end of the day. And then it's great too, because the people that come in there, as long as you do a good job, obviously they leave happier because of that.
Right.
Yeah. The only time I question my job is when I get tattooed myself, and I'm like, it's a longer one. I'm like, do I have to do this to people all day? Oh my God. But at least they come in there wanting it at least. So that's the good
Right.
news.
Right. One of the early things that really drew me to your work was, well, I think it was actually this piece because we put out
Yeah.
a call for the Colorado Festival of Horror coloring book, and you sent us the black and white of this, which I always loved this image. Let me turn off the banner real quick, but yeah. How long ago did you create this?
Yeah, so honestly, the reason why that piece is so good and the reason why I like it so much is because I didn't think too much when I made that piece.
Okay.
Because I remember it was around the time I remember you guys were doing the thing where you're trying to get artwork for the horror coloring book, and I saw a bunch of artists, some of the artists that were going to be in it, and I was like, oh, this is cool. And it was like, God, it had to have been a week before like the deadline on it. And
Yeah.
I was like, I'm gonna draw something up. And it was one night, God, it was one of those nights where I just couldn't sleep very well. So I just woke up in the middle of the night and I was like, I was gonna draw something for this and see how
Yes.
it turns out. And I didn't think too much about it when I drew it. And then several hours later, early morning comes and it was done. And then that's when I sent it off. And it was one of those, like I said, it was a piece where when I created it, I didn't overthink anything. Like, oh, it needs to look like this, or that. I just
Right.
kind of just did what I thought at the moment, and kind of based off of like, you're kind of your emotions at the time,
Mhm.
and that's kind of when I do my best work, when it's just not overthinking it, and just kind of based off pure emotions in that moment, kind of thing. And then I really liked, and I think that piece is a good representation of my stuff I do in general, where it's something but at the same time, subject wise, it's not really anything. It's kind of a mix, and it's like a mold of a bunch of different types of things, where it's kind of surrealistic in a way, so to speak.
Okay. Yeah, it's incredibly surrealistic. I mean,
Yeah,
it's also very Lovecraftian of sorts.
exactly. And like
Yeah.
Lovecraftian is a huge influence on me, and I like combining a lot of different subjects, and just kind of throwing them all into a blender, so to speak. But yeah, very
Yeah.
Lovecraftian is a good way to put it, because his stuff was like a huge influence on me when I was growing up.
Very heavy metal. And speaking of which,
Yeah.
here's the Mastodon, poster you did for the band a while back. This is pretty sweet.
Yeah,
How
Yeah,
did
that's
this come
actually one of
about?
my favorite pieces as well. Not to say all of them are going to come up are my favorite, but you know,
Yeah,
you know, as an artist, you like maybe one out of every 10 pieces you do. But
right. You're your
so
worst
that,
critic.
yeah, right, exactly, exactly. And I think that's good though, because it helps you push yourself, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, for that one, that was the show poster for the Mastodon and Coheed and Cambria show at the Fillmore here in Denver,
Sweet.
and it was in 2019.
Nice.
Um, yeah, the last year shows before the whole pandemic thing.
Right.
But yeah, so that one that was sold at the show. So when you do those, they're sold at the show basically with like all the rest of the merch like T-shirts
Mhm.
and hats, all sorts of stuff. And they usually make a limited amount of those. I think they made like 200 of those, but and people
Wow.
are really big into that stuff, so they sell quick no matter who does. I mean, speaking of, the poster behind me was actually one that was on that tour as well by another artist buddy of mine named Scott Giannacristano, who's really good as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's pretty sweet. We're getting a few comments in.
This guy's
Jonathan
cool.
said this guy's cool.
Thank you,
Uh,
Greenwood.
wow, that is badass. Yeah, it is, and yeah, he is such a good artist.
Well, thank you. But yeah, that poster that was really fun. Like I said, a lot of my stuff definitely translates well to the rock and metal scene in
Right.
general. Because that was a piece the band and like the management, they kind of let you design something. They give you pretty free reign to do what you want, you know.
Cool.
So, and it was for a 10th anniversary tour for their album Crack the Sky. So that's kind of what I based it on. And then I got lucky with that one because usually you don't have any say over what show it's going to be sold at. So that one just happened to be in Denver, which is where we live. So that was nice because I got to go to the show and everything. So
Sweet.
yeah.
Sweet. Did you were you able to meet the band or
Yeah, like because so the guy I met through the band was Billy. He was the guitar player for the band, and he basically him and I emailed back and forth, you know, because I had some other work I was gonna do for him, and then COVID happened, so everything's kind of put on hold for a bit. But yeah, so he knew that I lived in Denver at the time, so he was like, yeah, man, I'll just go to Will Call and ask, you know, I'll put your name down. So I went in there, they gave me guest passes, VIP passes, the whole treatment. So it's pretty sweet.
That's pretty awesome. Your band art is just absolutely fantastic. So there's this piece.
Yep. Yeah. And that's for a local band here in Denver. They're like, if you like death, like black metal, like this is the band for you.
Yeah.
If you want to be put into a dark place, this is a good band for you.
It's pretty fascinating to see, you know, like this intersection between art and heavy metal music and horror.
Honestly, that's what attracted me to metal in the first place. I'd go to the record store as a kid and I would just buy these albums just based off the cover because I just love the artwork so much, you know. And then I just happen to like these bands, and that's one of my, you know, big passions with the whole metal scene and like the horror scene. It's like the art that goes with it. And I think it's just some of my favorite art, you know, styles in general.
Yeah, most definitely. Like, yeah, this piece that you did for another band just reminds me of Guar. You know, right out of the bag.
Yeah, that's awesome. Guar is awesome too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was one where this piece definitely is a piece where the band approached me because I had done some other artwork for them, and they were like, "Here's what our album's about," and then just threw me a list of stuff to put in it, basically. So it's kind of one of those pieces where it's more about like, it's like a Where's Waldo of like the metal album cover, you know, where it's more about just kind of looking at it and being like, what is going on, and kind of figuring that out for yourself, you know.
Right.
Yeah, but that one's a lengthy piece. So that one took, like, those pieces take quite a bit of time for stuff like that. It's really just about trying to find like 3-4 hours, and you know, or if you can put in more, obviously you can put in more, but every day just squeeze it in between other jobs, you know, while you're doing that, and in order to get it done on time. Because as an artist, you know, you don't want to put something out, even if they like it, you don't want to put something out that you're not satisfied with, because in the end, you have to be satisfied with it more than anybody.
Right. And you know, for that, you're doing like mostly digital paintings at that point.
Yeah, at that point, yeah, it's just easier. It's way more streamlined. It's good to go. And then all you got to do is send them the file. You know, you don't have to scan anything, or like You don't have to transfer it, take photos, and then put it into Photoshop or whatever, and then clean it up from there. It's just, you kind of just set it up as you go, send them the file, and you're good to go. A lot of that I did in just Procreate on my iPad.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
And it's so much easier too to address it that way if there is big changes.
Exactly. That's the thing. You just keep everything on separate layers, and if one thing needs to go, then you can just get rid of it without changing anything else. And that right there is the nail on the head. You can make changes and edits to anything without having to like start all over, essentially.
Right. Man, that's pretty cool. The do you still go back to like traditional, drawing from time to time?
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely always that like itch that needs to be scratched with like traditional stuff, so a lot of that too is kind of the same way I approach that album cover. I just try to find a couple hours here and there a day to do some stuff. I'm still a really big fan of doing a lot of color pencil pieces and like watercolor.
Cool.
Color pencils are like a big passion of mine. They just take so long to do for me, like the way I lay them out, that it's by the time you're done with the piece, you're just like, all right, I'm done with color pencils for a while.
Right. Yeah. I don't think I swiped any of your color pencil pieces. It's obviously,
it's been a while since I posted some color pencil stuff.
Okay.
And then like I said, it's because I have a couple I'm working on now. I'll post eventually that are pretty big ones. But for me, when I do color pencils, like I can work 4 hours and you get that much done.
Right.
So,
Me too. Me too. Yeah. Here's a crowd pleaser. Baby Yoda. I guess it's Gorgu now, or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Which I just still say Baby Yoda because it's better.
Yeah. Oh, this one looks like he turned to the dark side, huh?
Yeah, that was the key of that one. I always have to add my little spin to it to make it nice and dark.
Yeah.
But yeah, that one was fun. Plus, that one, stuff like that is guys like Scotty Young and comic book artists are like kind of a big influence on me. That real cartoon illustrative style.
Right.
Yeah, because I'm a huge comic book guy. I've been reading comics since I was a kid. I have way too big of a collection, so it's kind of like one of those things. I just like doing those too when I have the opportunity.
What was your first comic book?
God, my first comic book, it was probably something I grabbed out of my dad's box when I was a kid. It was like probably Daredevil or Spider-Man, one of the two, like some early Daredevil or Spider-Man. Spider-Man as a kid was definitely my favorite just because you can relate to the character so well, the whole Peter Parker thing in high school and stuff like that. You could just relate to the character. So I just read everything Spider-Man for a while, and then kind of the older I got more into like, Daredevil, Captain America type stuff, because to me, like as soon as I started reading Daredevil, I was like, oh, this guy's hardcore, that and Batman and stuff like that. But I still read a little bit of that stuff, but now I'm a big like image guy, like independent comic stuff where I like guys who write their comics and can do whatever they want. They don't have any editors, over their shoulder telling them what they can or cannot do. And I think Robert Kirkman has been the biggest influencer in that, with like The Walking Dead. Have you seen Invincible yet?
Yeah, I've been watching the cartoon series. I've never read the comic, but
yeah, I've literally read every issue of that comic, and I'm like so happy it's out there now because it's like superheroes on like gore though,
Right.
Yeah.
It's incredibly graphic.
Yeah.
For animated gore, I'm just like.
Yeah, it's pretty intense, and it's great they did that because that's exactly how it was in the book, and I just thought it was so good, and I think the storytelling in it's great too. Yeah,
well, that's always something too, like with like superhero storytelling, and you see this a lot with Amazon's The Boys.
Yeah.
As you do with Invincible, it's like it's gruesome and bloody, and to some extent, some of those realities of the physical bodies that we inhabit, they're not going to be able to endure G-forces,
exactly, right?
Fast speeds and an impact from a god named Superman or something like that. Just not. Of course, to be fair, in DC Comics, Superman, he holds back. You
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
but these archetypes that are presented in Invincible and The Boys, they don't know how to hold back, and they're psychotic as fuck.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the thing too. Like as you get older, I kind of appeal to the more like that's why I like The Boys so much. The whole like if superheroes like did exist in real life, like
Right.
most likely they'd be like some corporate sellouts or something, you know,
Yeah.
and like yeah.
Yeah. You know, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely.
Yep. Yep.
So I think these shows are demonstrations of that. Most definitely. Yeah, Jonathan, he loves Baby Yoda.
Oh yeah, Baby Yoda. Yeah, nice. Yeah, I don't think there's not a lot of people that don't like Baby Yoda. That's why I drew that one.
Yeah, no, Baby Yoda's amazing. Here, yeah, this is another one of my favorites of yours,
Yeah.
and yeah, to me, I think you should you know, this tells a big story. Something unfortunate happened to this poor
Yeah.
monkey. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about how
Yeah,
this
yeah.
came
So
about?
stuff like this is like a lot of stuff I like to do in my free time. If you notice, like a lot of my stuff, I kind of have these like weird like trails coming from people's like heads and stuff like that. I just aesthetically, I just like it. I think it looks cool. You know, that's
Yeah,
mainly the reason why I do it. I just think it adds a cool element and kind of moves your eye a little bit. But yeah, stuff like this, it's more about like it's kind of telling a story. Either you can either kind of relate it to yourself or just a story in general. You know, where it's like talking about kind of like the psychic part of your mind, you know, and like how it can be affected by certain things, you know, whether it's
right.
the monkey itself or does that monkey kind of represent you know, and like kind of how you're thinking, you know, and what you've been through or what you haven't been through and so on, you know. I try to have my pieces where when someone looks at it, it's not like, oh, this is what this means. It's kind of like whatever it means to the viewer at that time is what that piece means, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever they take away from it and interpret
Yeah.
and stuff. Do you ever have conversations with you know, some of your fans, you know, uh, as to, like, you know, whether they're able to articulate why they like it, or, you know, maybe even like, hey, don't like this one so much, or, you know, something to that effect.
Yeah, that's a good question. I've definitely had a lot of people talk to me about that. People that have bought my work. Honestly, I think yeah, a lot of it I think is kind of what I said before. Some people will they'll message me. I get a lot of emails too. They're like, "Oh, I bought this piece from you. I love it." Like, it just says so much to me. You know, not me, but the person who bought it. They'll tell me that, "Oh, it means so much to me." Like, it kind of reminds me of like this, or that. You know, and that might not be exactly what I was thinking when I made it,
Right.
but to them, that's kind of how they articulate it, and that's like my whole goal with my work is it can mean to them whatever it means to them as long as it kind of when they look at it kind of moves them or it triggers that like you know that happy bone in them that you
Yeah,
know we get
happy.
that we
I
get
like that. Happy
where you
bone.
get yeah where you get a little like serotonin rush you know when you see it.
Mhm.
That's kind of my goal whether they you know they know exactly what it means or not.
Mhm.
But yeah there's definitely some pieces people have gotten like oh they've kind of put the nail on the head for exactly what I was thinking. But at the same time, I feel like for the more abstract stuff I do, the little more out there stuff, there's definitely like a fan base for that. It's definitely a tighter, smaller one.
Mhm.
Because there's a lot of people that like, you know, I like to think I'm somewhat of an individual. So there's not a ton of people that are thinking on the same level or same, you know, stratosphere, so to speak. But there's definitely stuff like, you know, like the Baby Yoda stuff and like more pop culture related
Yeah.
stuff that, you know, people like just tend to gravitate towards more.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's yeah. I'm glad that you're having those conversations, because you know
Yeah.
that can be such a hard topic to kind of bridge for an artist.
Yeah, it's hard, you know. And it's kind of like a musician. I remember
Right.
going to a show one time. I forgot what band it was. He was like, "Oh, this song." I would explain how this song is, but if I tried to explain what I meant when I wrote the song, it's not going to make any sense. So whatever it means to you, it means to
Hmm.
you, you know. And I was like, "Oh, I like that," you know.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely. Now you've got this fan poster of Day of the Dead, the
Yeah.
film. Uh, so is this one of your favorite films?
Yeah, and so basically for that was done. So I'm trying to remember his name. This guy, he works for a company where they have the rights to certain older movies and like
Okay.
genres like merchandising rights. So what they do is they hire artists that they like to make posters and other stuff, and then
Cool.
they make prints of those and sell them into like the communities that follow them and everything like that. So for this one, but it is one of my favorite movies. I've always been a big like zombie guy. Like I like apocalyptic movies, you know, where the world's kind of screwed over, you know, and people gotta like survive and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm a big nerd for that stuff. So for this one, but yeah, he kind of gave me some ideas. He's like, oh, he showed me some of my art. He's like, oh, I like this style, and this style. Kind of put it all together and make like you know, this guy the central piece of it. And other than that, this one was just kind of just brainstorming and going from there and trying to make something that looked cool, you know.
Right. Oh,
But this one was fun though, because there's a lot of colors to it for a silk. Cause it was a silk screen poster, so all the colors have to be printed individually. So
right.
the way you kind of have to set it up digitally as you paint it, it's a very tedious process.
Yeah, that sounds tedious. So you literally have to have all those layers separated so they can go make a silk screen off of that.
Exactly, and the way most of them do it, they do the lighter colors first. So it's like that light yellow would be first. So you kind of have to cut out the other colors so it kind of fits over it like a puzzle without going over that previous color that was just printed, you know. And to set it up like that, it's tedious. But this one I really like. I just really like the color scheme in this one, you know.
Yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous. You know, it's
with my colors though, it's not too hard to figure out where I'm going. It's usually like some cooler colors for the main colors, and then I kind of always do like an accent color that's like a warmer color, like an orange or a red, or vice versa. You know, that's kind of how I like to do a lot of my stuff.
Right. Earlier, you were mentioning, you know, how sometimes you'll wake up and you're in a state and you got to sit there and draw things out and create a piece that way. You know, do you have a more substantial process, or is it just something that like a stroke of inspiration that comes to you?
That's a good question too. I mean, we'll start with, so I'm a Scorpio, I guess that's my sign. I don't really believe in that stuff too much. You believe it as much as you want to, but basically every decision I've made in my life has been based off pure emotions and no logic. Okay. So that's kind of how I approach all my work too. It's really all about like the mood I'm in. If I'm in a really good mood, I'll have these moods where I'm like in a great mood. I'm feeling inspired. I'm feeling confident. That's when I really try to sit down and do something. And then there's other days where you're kind of struggling just to get an idea laid out, you know, but you kind of have to just push through it, you know. You just keep pushing through it, and eventually something kind of comes out, you know. Some days it's right away, some days it takes a week just to get an idea laid out, you know.
Right. Yeah.
But for me, it's all about just kind of approaching it when I'm in the right state of mind, you know, whether that's 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, or it's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It just kind of all depends. I know that's not really an answer, but
well, it's, you know, it is. I mean, you know, every situation is a little bit different. You know, you know, is it you know, when it comes to the more commercial stuff, you know, and granted, you know, you're kind of working in a field of like music and horror, so there's a lot of, it sounds like there's a lot of freedom, but if you're working for a client, you know, does that kind of narrow?
Yeah, it definitely does. It almost helps a lot because you'll talk to them and with the client, and you'll kind of get ideas of what they want. And it kind of narrows down the process, so I'm not all over the place so much. It kind of helps me focus more on exactly what needs to be done,
right?
And try to find my freedom within that zone of their idea, you know. But mainly for the music stuff, yeah, it's usually one or the other. It's usually 0 or 100. They either have something, they want it listed out exactly like this,
right?
Or it's like, oh, just do whatever you want and we'll see if we like it type thing, you know?
Okay, yeah.
But with the music, if they give me more freedom, it's more about just throwing on like an album by theirs and then just listening to it a couple times and then kind of coming up with my own thing from there. That helps a lot. It's just throwing on the music and listening to the lyrics. And a lot of the times for bands, I'll just have them send me the lyrics and I'll just take a look at the lyrics and kind of draw something based off that. Because for me, if I see the lyrics like something written out, it helps me think of it in my head visually more, you know?
Right. Well, that's what a great tool, you know, music is, because it, I mean, yeah, what a, you know, it can, yeah, drive the influence of the visual language, but at the same time, it's such an impactful like transport for messaging because it's instantaneous.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. And of course, visuals and music work so well hand to hand.
So great.
Yeah. You were mentioning back in the day, you would pick up albums based on their artwork, and
Oh, yeah.
I would have to say that I think that was the same way for me.
Yeah.
Some of the record stores you weren't able to listen to the album that you were interested in, so it lived and died by the strength of the
exactly
art.
because I know the stores I went to, it was always this old guy who had this used record store, used and new, and he would not let you do anything until you bought it. So
yeah, most definitely. Growing up, what were your big we talked about Day of the Dead, but what other horror movies and horror, anything
so for me,
influenced you?
Yeah, for me growing up, I was more of like I always fell on the more of the sci-fi horror stuff.
Okay, yeah,
and then, like almost stuff that kind of made you really have to think, quite a bit too. Like for me, the movie that kind of changed it all for me was like Alien and Aliens.
Nice.
Those two movies are like after those movies came out, I was just like obsessed with like H.R. Geiger's artwork. When I found out he was the guy who kind of designed the alien, the xenomorph in the first place.
Right.
So stuff like that was huge for me. A lot of sci-fi stuff, even like stuff like Predator, the first one was just, I was just like, I still think it's a perfect movie to this day. There's only a couple like, be Alien, Predator, and then maybe like Terminator, like those three. Because I don't know if you consider Terminator horror. The first one, maybe.
Well, so like as you were talking about, there's sci-fi horror. I've had like this discussion with people like, well, there's sci-fi and then there's horror. It's like,
yeah, exactly, and it can't be separated too.
I was like, well, horror is one of those flexible modes that can find its way into any genre.
Yeah.
So, you have sci-fi horror, which Alien is a perfect example of, where you have this unknown creature, this thing, in this isolated area. It's horrifying, and it plays on, your psychology so well.
And that's what I liked was that aspect of it. Was the psychological aspect, because my older brother was a huge horror junkie, so I kind of just like followed suit, And so I also loved the classic slasher movies and stuff like that.
Right.
I loved Halloween and then like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And to me, Alien was kind of like that in space,
That's what the Terminator movie is. It's a slasher film.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got a more, not necessarily realistic, but at least it's got a backstory that you can follow. Whereas like Mike Myers is the shape, or Jason Voorhees eventually becomes some supernatural thing that's not really defined or anything like that.
Yeah.
But in the Terminator films, the T-100 is defined, and it is this still just as terrifying because it's this thing from the future that is coming to kill.
Yeah.
And it's essentially, a slasher film just with guns and explosions.
Yeah. And you can't tell me either, like the scene when he's like taking his eyeball out, in the first one. Because I remember watching that as a little kid at my dad's girlfriend's house, and I was like, whoa, this is crazy.
Just like cutting away and taking away the damaged areas and, leaving all that stuff exposed. And when I saw that, I think, that stuff, was terrifying. And then, you also go to the spectrum, the pendulum swings in the other direction too. And you've got movies like Silence of the Lambs, which is a fantastic suspense, but also a slasher flick too.
Yeah. And I would agree with that. And then on the other side, I do like the other straight up horror stuff. Like I was a huge fan of like House of a Thousand Corpses and like the Devil's Rejects. Those two movies together, I thought were really well done.
Well, and as a fan of metal too.
Yeah, exactly. The Rob Zombie films.
Rob Zombie's, that was his first, feature film that he directed. So
yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's
that was another one that was just bizarre. It was just bizarre too,
mhm.
some of the stuff, and that's kind of what I like is the stuff where it's either I either like the stuff that's just straight up kind of like slasher, where it's just kind of super straightforward, or the exact opposite, where it's like just bizarre and just like, what is this? Like, why are these people here? What is
Yeah,
happening? Like, why is there this like devil thing that lives like underneath the house and all this crazy
yeah,
stuff? So,
yeah.
yeah.
One thing I'd love to see from you one day is
Uh-huh.
like you know, you mentioned that you did the Day of the Dead for uh, yeah, a creative company that does licensing and everything.
Yeah.
Do your own book of original films that are not made, you know,
Okay.
and just do fictional movie posters.
Yeah, yeah, that would be awesome. That would be awesome. That idea has crossed my mind several times, you know. And I have the same problem all other artists have, though. It's just like, damn, if there was just only more than 24 hours in a day, you know.
Right,
If I
right,
didn't have
right.
to sleep either, you know.
Yeah, I mean that is something with a lot of artists. So many ideas, you know,
Yeah,
but sometimes, you know, time or the drive for execution
yeah,
is always there. Is that something you have an issue with, like maybe closing, you know, like also shutting off your brain?
yeah, definitely. That's one of the things. So, what could a good way I used to come up with certain ideas was it'd be that like hour, hour and a half. I would, you know, when I'm laying in bed trying to fall asleep.
Uh-huh.
I would have all because my mind kind of races. I'm one of those guys where it's like sometimes when you talk to me, I might not seem like I'm all there because I'm always thinking about stuff like that. So
Right.
I would write down my ideas as I was trying to fall asleep because I would get these weird ideas in my head. But
Mm.
the problem with that though was I would always just scribble out like a word or two and be like, "Oh, I'll remember what this is," and then I'd wake up in the morning being like, "What the hell was I thinking?" Like I have no idea what I was thinking, you know.
Right,
Um,
right,
so yeah, and then at that point I was like, well, you just got to get it. If I have an idea, I just know there are certain ones that are a little bit stronger than others. So when that does happen, if I get a pretty strong idea, I just try to get it out of my head and put on paper in some form,
mhm.
so I don't have to worry too much about remembering it, and then I can always go back to that and finish it up. You know?
Yeah, yeah. Having to sit there and interpret your own thoughts, man, that can be tough and
Yeah,
messy. So yeah, yeah, keeping those good sketch notes, so to speak, that's that can be you know, kind of trying at times too, especially if you're not too
mm.
inspired.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because I have that notes app on my phone,
Oh,
and
cool.
I have a thing labeled in there, art ideas, and there's
Okay.
probably a list of like 250 ideas, and
Oof,
like
right.
you know, half of them maybe I've even gotten to at all, you know, because you just don't have the time for it. But I'm sure you've had ideas where you're like, okay, I've thought of this, and that, but there's this one in particular I know is
Right.
the best one, so I'm gonna go with that one for now, you know.
Right.
Yeah, so that's kind of how I pick and choose, just kind of based off of what I think is going to be the best one. And if it
Nice.
doesn't always end up being the best one, but you know,
Yeah, it's always tough to kind of, you know, gauge which germ of an idea, you
yeah,
know, has legs.
yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, you know, it's not always the most clear cut. Sometimes you're you know, you're second guessing yourself, and you know, yeah, some I find feedback is really helpful.
Yeah,
You
even
know,
if you don't like the feedback, it's very helpful.
yeah, yeah. Well, and you know, that can also, you know, yeah, even if you don't like the feedback, that can still help, you know, form a better structure kind of going forward, or you know, have you help you you know, consider what other people's perspectives might be when endeavoring
Yeah,
the
organization helps too, but as an artist, I've never really been too organized.
right. Neither have I. Neither have I. Yeah, and this was another one that I really liked.
Yeah.
You know, I always thought this was going to be like a comic book or something, but this is actually for another band.
Yeah, so this one I really enjoyed doing because there's a funny story behind this one too. So this band, they're really good. So I'd recommend checking them out. And so this is a good example of a band being like, we want to base this shirt and this design off of a particular song, right?
Okay.
So there's actually a song on YouTube you guys can check out by this band, and it's called I believe it's called Bruce Willis is a Ghost. It's like it's just So
from
it's a kind
Sixth
of a funny
Sense, right?
it's a funny title for it because and I guess they're big like Sixth Sense fans and the song doesn't really have anything to do with it. It's just kind of a funny title, but they're like do a design kind of based off of that, but like it kind of involved the whole Bruce Willis thing, but not at the same time. So if you look closely at this, that guy, that zombie thing in the middle, actually is Bruce Willis. But I
Okay.
made it so it's like it's Bruce Willis, but it's not him at the same time. It kind of has some similar features to him, like the hair and stuff. Like, because I looked at like some picture references, and I kind of just drew him as like a zombie guy, and then the rest of it was kind of just like let's just make something that looks metal as fuck.
Yeah. That's
But
cool.
that one I really like too, and I like doing these shirts because I'm a big fan of the single colored stuff. I think it looks good for like metal bands and on shirts and stuff like that. It reads well. That shirt will last a long time too. So
yeah, most definitely. Yeah, this was another really cool one too that you designed.
This one is another one. This is just a one I did in my free time, kind of where I kind of hope to use it for a poster for something someday if I feel like it fits. But like this is a good one where this was a time in my life where it was like I was trying to find like I was a little bit lost with certain things and like this. So to me, this piece kind of represents kind of like reaching out and trying to find or touch that like unknown, whether you know what that is or not yet. And that's kind of what it represents. Like that whole ball in the middle is like this like energy thing he's kind of reaching towards. But obviously it's my interpretation of it. So it's a little bit, surrealistic, so to speak.
Yeah.
But for me, like that, definitely, this is just a good example of me drawing something kind of based off of things going on in my life at that time, like on an emotional level.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Art can be incredibly therapeutic.
Yeah, exactly. But like I said, like the way I explained the last one, most people would look at that and not really interpret it that way, And this is another good one too, where this was kind of just based off of a chaotic couple weeks of my life, and I sat down and drew this one and like it's a kind of a female figure, so it's not me per se, but it's more of like kind of just letting your mind loose and free and having free thoughts, free speech, free whatever, because this was kind of during the time when it's like one side or the other you fall onto, and this is kind of my interpretation of kind of being like, well, you should fall on whatever side like feels right to you, or like as long as you're not hurting people obviously and stuff like that. But it's kind of just something where it's like we could all learn a lot if we just listen from each other type thing.
Right. So this one's a little bit more, kind of universal in its messaging.
Yeah, and it's just kind of like an expression of, hey, like everyone has a different way of thinking on everything in life, and we shouldn't confine everybody to this, that, or the other. Because we're all, as cheesy as it sounds, like we're all humans, Dan. We're all humans.
We're all a bunch of bipeds and monkeys. Yeah, one day we'll learn to stop throwing our own shit at each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully that day will come sooner than later.
Yeah, the whole point of that, like I said, was just think how you want. You don't need to choose a side. You don't need to be on a side. Let your mind just kind of flow.
Yeah. So with the pandemic and everything, you've taken up tattooing and expanded on doing that. Going forward, with that, before we went went live, you and I were talking about like the how physical tattooing is, and how hard it is on your back and your extremities and stuff. Is that something that you ever
thought
about? Because like sitting at a computer and doing digital art too. I mean that's
it's kind of the same thing a lot of ways. Yeah, but Dan, I'm an artist, so I don't think things through. I just don't. I just do.
Right.
But yeah, it's all about there's ways to kind of control it to make it a little bit easier on you. But yeah, for me, I would love to start doing more stuff in the music biz. Obviously, I was kind of on track to do some cool stuff for some more tour posters and stuff like that. But obviously the pandemic hit, so all that's kind of on a standstill. But it looks like we're starting to get some stuff back here fairly soon as far as that goes. But I'm really enjoying the tattooing right now. It's great. It's one of those things where I enjoy making people happy with my artwork, you know, so I can do that every day, and you get to do it in person as well, which is a great thing. So you get to see it, you know, in person every day. And so yeah, for now, it's definitely something I'm going to keep pursuing for a while, I think, you know. I still want to do all my other stuff as well, but as far as the day job goes, you know,
that's going to be it for a while. And you know, the human skin too is such a different canvas than obviously digital, but you know, more
permanent
tech stuff. Yeah, and it's going to be more permanent. So so you definitely want your best stuff to be living on somebody else's skin as long as you can.
Yeah, and with that, it's just you just have to do your homework, you know. And then also it's a mental thing, a big thing. You just have to go into it just being like, I've done this, you know, hundreds of times already. Like just know you can do it, and then it goes a lot smoother.
Yeah, with that too, like, do you get a little bit of the freedom that you do with you know, doing some of these posters and stuff?
Yeah, and it depends. Like, you definitely get stuff. Like, I just did a piece the other day. Granted, it was on someone that I know. She is a friend of mine, and she basically had me start designing this sleeve that she's gonna have on her arm. So the first one I did, it was like a 6-7 hour session basically. And it took up her whole back arm and everything. But with that, she just liked my art style, so she was kind of just telling me, "Hey, could you just help me design it, draw up whatever." I kind of know her style as well, what I thought would fit hers. So that was a good example of just drawing kind of whatever I thought worked well for her, and her ending up liking it a lot. So, and then we just went from there, which is awesome. Good. But that is very few and far in between, though. Most times people have like a pretty good idea of what they want, and you want to stick to that. But it's all about, at that point, it's just about trying to execute it the best you can. Instead of, it's not really about like, oh, this isn't a style I love to do, but it's about executing it the best you can, you know?
Yeah, right.
Like, a lot of what I do is script work, which is lettering, you know, because a lot of people like that. And when I first got into it, I didn't think it would be something I like. I'm like, oh God, that's so boring. But after doing it for a while, I found like a real love for it, actually. And like every time I do it, I'm like, this is going to be the cleanest one yet, you know? And,
wow.
Yeah, and you find a lot of joy in if you approach it that way.
Is there a lot of, do you have to be very disciplined, or, you know, how did you grow to love it? Do you know?
As far as that goes, I mean, you have to be disciplined as far as like taking it seriously. I mean, you know, the tattoo business and tattoo artists in general have a certain reputation for a reason. But you know, for the shop I work at, it's a very busy shop. And the type of stuff that comes in is stuff where it's like, yeah, you have to be focused, and you have to be pretty determined. Like, it has to kind of be a lifestyle for you in order to succeed at it.
Right.
Yeah, like it can't just be like a part-time thing, you know.
Right. Yeah. Right. Most definitely. The now, you and I and Elise, we have a project that we've been working on together. So I'll share that with everybody. So yeah. Stanley Kaiju and the Subterranean Bunny Defenders. So here's the cover art that you colored and I illustrated.
Nice and bright.
Yeah. I'm so sorry that you had to deal with all my line work.
Oh yeah. There's some stuff on. Yeah, I'm like, damn. I'm surprised. Like, I was like, man, this guy's got some patience with some of these pages, because it's like you have all these lines in between lines and stuff, and like you definitely have a ton of lines, man. I've noticed that. Believe me, I've noticed that. Which is cool though. It's definitely a unique style to your own, which is very hard to do as an artist, to find like your own unique style, you know.
Yeah, I'm a little OCD for line work, and you know, the way I approach it is it becomes a bit of a meditation. You know, with a deadline. Yeah.
And honestly, that's the same thing with tattooing as well. You know, it's like a lot of stuff I do is like fine line work, you know, and it always becomes a meditation thing at that point too. But the comic book, I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, it's you know, I think we've just got a few more pages that to put together, and then I got Zach lettering it, and then it should be off to the printers hopefully sometime in July, I think.
Yeah. And and I it's definitely a very it's an off the wall, but also very grounded style, like family type story. You know, if that makes sense. It's off the wall, but it's also very family friendly at the same time.
Yeah.
At
So
least that's how I interpreted it. You know.
yeah, it's Elise, wrote a fun script, about a growing a creature that looks like a bunny that grows immensely big and eats alien
Yeah.
spaceships out of the sky. I mean, that's pretty much the story
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
a nutshell. But it's nice because it's like we want to do some family friendly stuff because we've all got nieces and nephews and everything running around, so they can't read my old stuff because it's very R rated.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think there's also something to be said too for kid genre horror and sci-fi and how cool that stuff is because I mean that's essentially what like the superhero stuff is.
Oh yeah, definitely. And we're definitely living in like a nerd world these days too. You know.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
back in
and
'95 when Batman and Robin with George Clooney was out. Like, did you ever think we'd have the stuff we have today? Like, no way.
right. You pretty much thought back then that movie killed the whole all
Yeah.
of pop culture. It's just like it's done. No, nobody's touching superheroes ever again. And then just what was it? Suddenly, like 3 years late. Well, I mean, no, you got the Blade movie back in
Yeah.
'98. And suddenly people were like, well, maybe we should take another stab. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pun intended.
Right. Right.
At this again. So that's how we got the X-Men movies, and just kind of went along from there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the it's so cool to see like how our childhoods have pretty much encapsulated our adult life too.
Yeah. Right. Right. It's pretty cool.
Kevin, it's been great having you on and learning about more about your art and your process and everything. For those watching, and those up and coming, artists or want to get into the arts, what is your recommendation?
My recommendation is there's two things really. Well, first one is the classic saying, which is just practice every day.
Mm-hmm.
A big thing is draw, illustrate, whether it's traditionally, digitally, do it every single day, because you never know when something you create can be used for something that could be your big break into a certain industry, for the career that you want. I know personally myself, I've just done stuff in my free time to where I would end up sending those pieces out to, different bands or different clients, and they ended up liking something I did, 5 years ago, just in my free time. So just practicing every day and just going by the saying, like finish, but not perfect. Finish what you're doing. Not everything you're going to do is going to be perfect, but just finish something every day if you can. And then the other thing would be just don't be afraid to suck in your pride and learn from people that are better than you. That's like the big thing is a lot of people don't want to accept other people's help and be like, oh, well, I'm not good enough yet. Let me find someone who is, so if you're an artist, best thing you can do is just meet other artists. Like, don't do it by yourself. Try not to just do the whole thing all on your own. Find other artists, seek them out, become friends with them, get one that, maybe someone that's more of a mentor to you. But just seek out other artists and, just grow from them, because it's just like your personality. You're going to have a bigger personality the more diverse people and it's going to be the same thing with artwork. The more artists the different art you study, the more diverse your work's going to be.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a good recommendation. And then Kevin, we've got your website streaming down below, kevinwaltzart.com. And where can people find you so they can get a tattoo by you?
Yeah, exactly. So, if you go to my Instagram too, which is just kevin.waltz, just like that, it'll have all my information on there as well. And then, but yeah, if you want to get a tattoo, it's at Clean Slate Tattoo and Piercing in Centennial, Colorado, which is basically just north of just north of E470 off of Broadway, kind of in between 285 and E470 off of Broadway. Can't miss it. It's right there. And like I said, you go to my website or my Instagram, Facebook, whatever, all that info is there. So
nice. Excellent. Kevin, thanks again for coming on to the show. Stick around for a few minutes after we sign off here real quick.
Cool. Yeah, thanks again, man.
Yeah, and to everybody that tuned in, thanks so much. Thanks to Hellfire Entertainment for hosting us on your social media. Mutiny Information Cafe. If you're going to start a revolution, make sure you're caffeinated. And to Alien Donut Films, our sponsor, to Bill and Angela, thanks so much for putting up with our shenanigans. And to my producers, Stefan Santa Cruz and Amanda Armstrong, appreciate all your help. Everybody out there, be good, be kind, help each other out during these tough times. And remember, we love you. Have a good night.
Later.